Hi guys! Today we're going to discuss about
Tautologies, Contradiction, and Facilities, and Categorical Syllogism.
how can we identify that the proposition is a tautology.
We can identify that the proposition is a tautology if it can be shown that the truth values for a proposition formed by connectives are all true. This is the example of truth table for three propositions P, Q, and R with 8 connectives is done. Since the ninth and final connective shows all these or truth, then the proposition is a tautology.
Tautology is the only condition required for a valid argument.
There are common tautologies that are very useful and often used. The proofs for these tautologies will be left as students exercise. These tautologies are classified as simple implications and equivalent implications.
Simple implications and equivalence implications. And each forms has 8 types, and these are
Simple implication. 1. Modus ponens. 2. Modus tollens. 3. Denial of disjunction. 4. Simplification. 5. Adjunction. 6. Hypothetical syllogism. 7. Absurdity. 8. Addition. Equivalence implication. 1. Idempotent law. 2. Double negation. 3. Communicative law. 4. Associative law. 5. Distributive law. 6. Contraposition. 7. De Morgan's law. 8. Equivalence for implication and dysfunction. Additional. 9. Negation for implication. 10. Biconditional sentence.
If the truth values for a proposition formed by connectives are all false, then the proposition is called contradiction. An example of such proposition is P and negation P. Verification will be left as learner's exercise. An argument is an assertion that a given set of statements called premises results in another statement called conclusion. Arguments may either be deductive or inductive. In deductive argument, the truth of the conclusion is a logical consequence of the premise. In inductive argument, the truth of the conclusion is supported by the premises. As an illustration, consider the following premises: P sub 1 and P sub 2, and the conclusion C. P sub 1, every quadrilateral is a polygon. P sub 2, a rectangle is a polygon. And C, a rectangle is a polygon. Since an argument is a resulting statement, then it has a truth value. If its truth is true, the argument is described as valid. Otherwise, it is a fallacy.
A fallacy is an incorrect argument in logic, which is result of invalid reasoning. A fallacy is not a synonymous with factual error. Some fallacies are popular belief. Some are often perceived. Some are unintentionally created, and some are intentionally created for description. Fallacies are either formal or informal. Formal fallacies are invalid arguments due to the flaw of logical structure. Formal fallacies arguments whose premise adequately support the validity of its conclusion. In many cases, informal fallacies are detective both in content and structure.
There are a number of fallacies that are commonly committed in daily conversation. Identifying these fallacies is necessary in order to avoid enticing missteps in instructing arguments.
Here are some examples of fallacy that are often used intentionally or otherwise. And these are number 1, circular reasoning; 2, undistributed middle; 3, insufficient statistics; and 4 is quantimium terminorum; 5, fallacy of inverse; 6, fallacy of equivocation; 7, fallacy of amphiboly; 8 is a fallacy of composition; 9 is post hoc ergo propter hoc; and 10 is ad Burgundian fallacy; 11, fallacy of false dilemma; 12, ad populum fallacy; 13, fallacy of faulty analogy; 14, ad hoc rescue; 15, fallacy of converse; 16, ad bonum; 17. Avoiding the issue. So what is circular reasoning?
Circular reasoning is committed when an arguer begins with concept that is supposed to be the end of the argument. The example is,
Example of circular reasoning. A measure is a quantity that expresses the measure of an object being measured.
So what is undistributed middle?
undistributed middle happens when the middle term in a syllogism is not distributed as a subject and as a predicate.
Example of undistributed middle. All triangles are polygon. All quadrilaterals are polygon. Therefore, all triangles are quadrilaterals.
And what is insufficient statistics?
Insufficient statistic is used in drawing a conclusion based on a clearly small population. Example is,
Example of insufficient statistic. A class of 40 students was subjected to an informal survey about the mayoralty candidate that they will support in the election. The survey says that 21 of students support candidate A. A surveyor declares that the majority of the city residents support the candidacy of candidate A. And that's all.
And what is quaternion terminorum?
quaternion terminorum is a fallacy that used for instead of three categories terms. The example is,
These are examples of quaternion terminorum. Every school has a principal. Every principal has an interest. Therefore, every school has an interest.
And what is fallacy of inverse?
the fallacy of inverse is denying the antecedent of a conditional and then assuming that by doing so, a sufficient reason to deny the consequent can be claimed. The example,
These are examples of fallacy of inverse. If Ralph was UP student, then he would know that UP official publication is the collegian. But Ralph is not a UP student, therefore it is certain that Ralph does not know that UP official publication is the collegian.
What is fallacy of equivocation?
the fallacy of equivocation is committed when the ambiguity of a term or a phrase in an argument which has occurred at least twice is exploited or deliberately misused.
The fallacy of equivocation. The end of life is death. Happiness is the end of life. Therefore, death is happiness.
And what is the fallacy of amphiboly?
The fallacy of amphiboly is ambiguity due to syntax structure. The example is,
Guidance or counselor is asked to stop bullying. This statement can be interpreted in two ways. The guidance counselor is bullying someone, or the guidance counselor is tasked to eradicate bullying.
What is the fallacy of composition?
Fallacy of composition is committed when the characteristics of some are transferred to another.
The example of this is,
Every member of gymnastic team is outstanding dance sports performer. The gymnastic team is an outstanding team.
what is postboc ergo propter boc?
Postbog ergo propter is a fallacy of causation which relates to events on the basis of temporal succession.
The example of this is,
Daniel failed most of his subject in 4th grading period because he did not submit his projects in the 3rd grading period.
what is advercondium fallacy?
Advercondium fallacy involves using pronouncement of a person taken to be an authority but is not really one as evidence.
What is the fallacy of false dilemma?
Fallacy of false dilemma limits unfairly an arguer to only two choices, as if the choices is on black or white.
The example of this is,
Decide, you are joining the RIP or just the same. You will pay the contribution.
what is ad populum fallacy?
Ad populum fallacy involves using popular opinion as evidence for a proposition.
Example of this is,
Survey shows that mathematics is the most disliked subject. So must dislikes mathematics too.
what is the fallacy of faulty analogy?
Analogies are used to support a conclusion using similarities of two things that are too remote.
What is ad hoc risk?
Ad hoc rescue is committed when trying to rescue a troubled belief by pleading different arguments.
The example of this is,
Skin blemishes are still present after 7 days of use. This soap probably is fake.
What is the fallacy of converse?
Fallacy of converse is accepting the consequence to accept the antecedent.
The example of this is
She is wrong when she claimed that Girolamo Cardano was insane because she is only a grade 10 student.
what is ad hominem?
Ad hominem is committed when ignoring the validity of an argument by attacking the personality of the arguer.
What is avoiding the issue?
Avoiding the issue occurs when an issue is answered by an argument, not really a response to the issue.
Example of this is
Issue. Why is she appointed the leader of the group? Answer. Why not she?